Welcome to the Penguin Podcast, brought to you by Penguin Facilities Management.
Welcome everyone to the Penguin Podcast. Joining us today is Emma Armstrong, founder at the Empro Group. So thank you for coming along and sitting with us today.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
It's okay. I've known you for a while now, and you're among one of the most resilient, hardworking people I know. Tell us how you got to where you've got to now.
Ooh, that's a good question. It's been a journey, 100%. So very fortunate to be in a lovely position that I am and running a really wonderful group of businesses. So we've got a consultancy business, a recruitment business, and a property portfolio. But it's been a challenge to get to where I am today. So I started off probably not really knowing what I wanted to do when going into my early career. And bounced around quite a bit, kind of figuring out what I like and what I don't like. I think as everybody does, you have to find your feet and understand a little bit more about you. And fell into FM by accident, which I hear so many times. So many people in the FM industry are like, oh, I just fell into it and it was a bit of an accident. Yeah. I ended up working at a company called Interserve. Loved Interserve, really, really good business. Fortunately, it doesn't exist anymore. And I worked my way through the business, doing loads of really cool things, and kind of amalgamated in running a really big bid for a very well-known government organisation that we secured and mobilised. And after that, I thought, I'm just going to give this a go on my own. So I left in 2018, set up Empro, very fast-paced, having to get into a consultancy project like pretty much straight away. And I've not looked back. So kind of gone from there really, and it's all snowballed. It's kind of grown and evolved over the years. So we set up in 2018. So we're 7 years old now. I've now got a team, predominantly female, based in Birmingham, and I absolutely love what I do, and I wouldn't want to do anything else.
Great. So with Empro, what's your goals? What's your mission with Empro? So you've obviously got the different strands of the business.
Yeah. Well, I was really unwell in 2022. So I was contracting and kind of growing my consultancy business. So I went from being a contractor to kind of winning projects and delivering those as a group rather than an individual. And I ended up in hospital in 2022. I actually became totally paralysed. So I went from being really normal. Well, that's probably a separate conversation. Probably not normal, but went from being as I was to in a coma, literally overnight. And I'm an only child, and I've got a little boy, Oscar. He's an only child. And because my work literally fell off a cliff, everything stopped overnight. When I started to get better and kind of eventually come out of hospital, I thought, right, I've got to build something bigger than me. There's got to be a legacy. I thought, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, what am I known for? What's the impact I've made and all of that good stuff? And also, like, what's Oscar going to do? Because if I'm not here, like, what's my legacy for him? So my why, which I've figured out, is him. And it's also building opportunities in the FM sector. So not always a career of choice. Fell into it by accident. Yep. I think we need to do more to promote what we do as a industry because we're frigging amazing. We need to shout about it more. And also for females as well, being a kind of an advocate for inclusion, for female leadership, for neurodivergent. So a lot of people in our business are neurodivergent, probably including myself.
And myself as well, to be fair.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people in FM tend to go down that path as well.
And do you know what? There is probably some science behind it, right? So FM is, it's everything everywhere when you think about it, not affiliated to EA. But, there's so many different roles in the FM industry, for everything from finance, HR, ops to service delivery to boots on the ground. And that's globally. If you think of every city and everywhere in the world, there are buildings that need maintaining. Obviously, the standards and the legislation is different depending on where you go, but everything needs maintenance, everything needs upkeep. And it's a really, I think the UK is really interesting because it's the most developed probably in the world, or one of the most developed in the world. But if you go over to Abu Dhabi, like, they are miles ahead of us. So there's still lots to do. But I think as an industry, we're growing, we're evolving really quickly. And that's really, really exciting.
So with your experience of working with lots of different companies and working on lots of different projects, what do you think that companies get wrong when they're choosing a facilities management provider? Because obviously in your role at Empro and the business, you get involved with lots of different consultancy work, don't you?
Yeah, so we traditionally help either organisations and clients get to market to outsource their FM, or we'll help FM suppliers bid, win and deliver new business or deliver change, whatever that may be. And I'd say the biggest thing I see as an error is, I mean, this is well known, right? It's always a race to the bottom. Everybody's fighting for market share. It's super, super competitive. It's low margin. But I think that's a really unhealthy habit to have. And it only ends, well, I wouldn't say disaster because that's a bit dramatic, but it's never going to end well if you don't invest in your maintenance, if you don't invest in your people, pay peanuts, get monkeys, you're not going to get the best of the market. And you're probably driving negative behaviour in doing so. And I think there are much better ways and innovations of looking at your portfolio and your team and your structure or your working habits to drive value, as opposed to just having things done cheaply or at low cost. And I think for me, that's the biggest challenge. Businesses are under pressure at the minute. The market's difficult at the minute as well, but that would be my biggest thing to avoid: is don't go for the cheapest, don't race to the bottom. Look at other ways to kind of making things efficient as opposed to just cost.
Yeah, and I think we've seen a lot in the industry where you have people focusing less on the PPM because they don't know the upfront costs, but actually their costs are going through the roof on the reactive side.
100%.
And I think that kind of goes with what you just said of there's lots of companies that go, we just want the lowest cost, lowest price, and that's it. But then 2 to 3 years down the line, they wonder why then the costs are racking up in the back end because things start breaking and things aren't working. And that affects not just the staff, but their clients and customers that are coming in.
It also depends what sort of organisation you are. So if you're an owner and an occupier, your appetite's probably going to be different if you're, just in a serviced office and all that sort of stuff. And for me, there's the kind of net zero agenda and how we all support that as a profession and as a nation, not just within FM. And I think, if you're maintaining assets well, and if you're looking at your kind of real estate portfolio, whether that be, that's more for owners, occupiers, but there's definitely more that we can do. And it's probably one of the biggest things that we can do to impact the market is be more efficient and be more economical with our assets.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously with you having multiple sides to the business, I guess this probably covers both the consultancy side and the recruitment side. Do you think that workplace culture plays a role in staff retention, especially in the kind of facilities and service-based roles?
Yeah, I think so. I think staff retention, in our industry, we all know that engineers are hard to come by. We know that there's an ageing demographic in the engineering workforce, and we actually need to do more to attract people into the industry. And I think if you're not focusing on your people, how they're treated, you're not going to retain staff. And I think particularly with trades where we've got a shortage of skill set, it's really, really important to be, transformational in terms of how you approach things and be an employer of choice, because if you're not, then people are going to exit, and that's going to mean it's going to be harder for you to retain people. It's going to be more costly for you to employ. If you think about cost to hire, time to hire, knowledge loss induction, it's probably a better way to approach business in terms of retention, as opposed to going on big recruitment drives. Actually, if you're retaining your staff, it's going to be the most effective way to grow your business as opposed to onboarding.
Because there's a cost, isn't there, to that turnover of staff, which I think a lot of people don't always appreciate.
Yeah, I've got a small business, and I know if I employ somebody, the amount of effort that goes into getting somebody up to speed and understanding the way we operate, our values, our systems, it's not quick. And actually, really, it probably takes between 3 and 6 months to get somebody properly embedded. So if you think about that time period to get somebody up to speed, that's a huge amount of time, especially in business and especially in FM where everything moves so quickly. If you think the amount of reactive and PPM calls and bits and pieces, and to make somebody feel wholly in your business, it does take a long time to bed in. So yeah, when you factor all of that in, and things like TUPE as well, organisations, when FM contracts change hands, there's that whole TUPE process. And actually, if you've got people that want to stay in your business and you redeploy them, that's going to be to your benefit, as opposed to, people exiting and you're losing all of that talent with contracts that may or may not leave. And
with you made a good point there in terms of TUPE. I think as well in the industry, there's that understanding is lacking a lot of the times. Yeah. And I know that you've done some work around that yourself, haven't you? Yeah, so we're really fortunate because we've worked on so many different mobilisation projects. I think we did some analysis, and I think it was at least 60,000 people that we've supported through a TUPE process, which is quite a big, scary number.
But I've seen it done really well and I've seen it done really badly. And I think where we are now with the technology that we've got, there is a better way to support people through change. And I think, for me, it's talent attraction in disguise. If you're going through a TUPE process, you want to be putting the best of your business forward. Say, hey, come and work for us. This is what it's going to look like. These are the benefits for working with us. Because equally, incumbents are going to be trying to retain and redeploy. So, for me, it's talent attraction in disguise if you're going through a TUPE process.
And I think from the employee side as well, it's how does that process look?
Yeah.
Because I think historically they've kind of been left, to the side, and it's just right. You're working here now.
Yeah, and I think there's also something to be said for what generation are going through TUPE. So if it's first generation outsource, that's a big change, and that's going to affect people's livelihood, their pay, their work. It's an incredibly important and big part of somebody's life. It's the biggest, arguably. And I don't think as an industry we put enough value and investment into that experience and consideration for kind of the change that employees are going through. I think if you're 20 generation outsourced, for somebody going through that, it's a different T-shirt. They're like, okay, my payslip's going to change, but that's pretty much it. And actually, people's affiliation can more often be related to the end client as opposed to the FM provider. So again, having a really strong employee value proposition and having a great culture will put you miles apart from somebody just thinking, they're going to change their T-shirt tomorrow and have a different payslip.
You spoke before around mobilisation briefly. In terms of contracts and kind of large projects, what are the key things that need to be done to mobilise effectively, and also what are the key challenges that a lot of businesses can face?
Yeah, I think one of the challenges is probably around. There's probably contracts is probably number one, and engagement with staff is probably number two. So a lot of the time, it's a big lift and shift. So we often get involved with mobilisations because you need an extra pair of hands to kind of manage the change effectively. And there's so many things that you can get wrong if you don't kind of plan it effectively. Having the contract well thought through, well executed in good time is the best thing to do first, because that kind of unlocks everything else. So if you're on your way with your contract and you're close to contract signature, you feel comfortable with engaging your supply chain, with getting POs out, with getting works underway, without it being too much of a risk. If you think contract's going to be long and protracted and potentially not be agreeable, that puts too much risk on both parties. So getting that right first up front is really, really key. If you can do that ahead of award with your bidding partners, that's probably really sensible. And seeing a lot more organisations do that now to kind of avoid that risk, especially with bigger businesses that have perhaps got more governance and compliance. It's a really good thing to do up front. I think understanding your assets for end clients. If you've got a pretty accurate asset list, you can have cost certainty. If you go into that without a correct asset list, you're at risk of being repricing afterwards. And that's on end client, I think, to get right, not FM provider. Because FM provider will rightly, they'll want to be paid for the assets they do maintain. Also around compliance, if you don't know what you've got, how are you compliant? That's big red flag. And I think the other thing is, again, once you've got contracts in place, you can then engage with incumbents and have TUPE conversations. However, more often than not, that gets left to like 28 days before, because incumbent has a job to do. They're really busy. They don't want, staff being carried off, and when they're trying to kind of get all their last bits and pieces in place. So early engagement isn't always, available. And that has to be respected, unfortunately, but that can mean that you've got a lot to do in like a 28-day window. And again, the employee suffers because they've only got 28 days. How do you get through that change? It's all a bit of a rush. If you don't invest in it, it can go really badly. So I think that'd be my top three: contract, asset, people.
And I think you're making a good point around the time there. I've seen some contracts previously where they've given you a week or two to go, right, mobilise, and actually having that conversation as early as possible with the end user to say, yes, we want to rush it through and you want us on site, that's great, but actually taking that extra couple of weeks will mean that everything's running smoothly, effectively, and everyone's happy. And I think it's starting to see some change. But actually, there's some people out there that just want to rush everything through.
I think it depends on your go live strategy. So you can do, well, we call it big bang. I don't know anyone else calls it, but we call it big bang. So it's like everything on day one. And sometimes you want to make a really big deal about the change and make it feel really noticeable. And it really depends on client and kind of what the perception is and what the kind of thoughts and feeling are about the FM service. Some organisations are more risk averse and they want to tiptoe into the change and they don't want big bang and they don't want anyone to notice because they want it to be business as usual. Like, you know, if you're a big corporate fee earning organisation, they're not going to be interested in seeing the change. They just want to keep doing what they're doing. Whereas if you're somebody more holistic, you might want to make more of a big deal about it so that, you know, you can support your colleagues who'll be delivering that service through that change. So, doing it staged, doing it big bang. Yeah. It's also really difficult to do in a short space of time if you've got asset systems, HR, TUPE, all within a 28-day window. So I'd say 3 months is a good amount of time. Yeah. Anything less than a month makes me a little bit nervous. It's possible, but it's painful. It just depends where in the spectrum you sit, I think. Yeah.
And in terms of new contracts that you kind of come across and you work with, how important is data, not just to obviously yourself as working with the client, but also to the end user moving forward within the FM space?
I think bad data in, bad data out. Yeah. If you've got a good data set, you know, you're going to know your compliance. It's going to help your engineers or anyone in the FM industry or part of your contract understand what you've got, where it is, how to access it. Even if you've got, you know, if you've got a big building and you've got 14 floors and if you talk about a specific asset, or which floor is it in, which cupboard at which end, it makes all the difference in making our lives easier in terms of finding that and fault finding. So it's probably a lot more efficient if you know what you've got as well. But it's probably one of the most common things that we see is actually people don't know what they've got. And I don't really know how that happens, because if you've counted all your assets and you should know what you've got, and if you have a project, you should manage the change. But it's probably one of the biggest things we see is actually people don't know what they've got and where.
Yeah, we tend to find if there's been a lot of change in the business, people have moved on, people have left, they probably had all that done at some point, and actually it's been moved into different folders, or actually, you know, it just doesn't exist anymore. So I guess every business has their own challenges, don't they, with that? But that's why that support is useful when coming to look at bids and tenders.
I think it's understanding your data set as well. I've seen occasions where knowledge of data hasn't always been very apparent, and people have uploaded more data into an existing system. But so then they've got duplicates and they've got missed assets and they've got, you know, multiple kind of duplications and challenges. And just kind of understanding data, how it works, how to get the best out of it, naming conventions, all that stuff is really, really important. Same as your asset tags, making sure that you've got everything linked. It just makes life so much easier.
Yeah. We see it a lot from our side, where we see, you know, those data-driven decisions with FM. Once you're in and working with a client, that's key, because you can drive real change that way. Doing things the way they've always been done isn't always the best way. It's actually utilising what you've got in front of you.
And I think, you know, there's so much we can do now with AI, with insights, with data. It's a really exciting world to be in, and I know there's a lot of organisations that are coming up with really cool things that can enhance the way that we look at data. I'm not an expert, you can probably tell because I'm waffling a little bit now, but it's exciting. So getting your data right is, for me, is really important, because there's so much you can do with it.
So moving away from data and looking more on the recruitment side of the business. So what would you say a future-ready workforce looks like? What are clients looking for in terms of the people they're looking to employ? Are you seeing any trends in the industry at the moment?
Yeah, we've probably got Rachel Reeves to thank for some of the cost-cutting exercises that we're seeing at the moment. So I think the market, it's unusual at the minute, because it's not like it's been for the kind of previous 5 years. Yeah. I think organisations are looking to make efficiencies and savings because of the changes that are happening externally. I think that, coupled with AI and technology advances, is meaning that you can drive efficiencies in businesses, but unfortunately what's happening is, you know, that's distributing the workforces. I think organisations now, if you've got repetitive tasks, you can pretty much look to either autonomise them or kind of make them a scheduled process. I think what is more valuable now is like thought leadership. So having people kind of think and look at challenges, maybe the things that technology can't do. I also think that trades and FM, like, plumbers, carpenters, electricians, everything in the construction industry that's going to be more of a prevalent, I'm trying to think of the right word. It's going to become more needed because that's something that you can't outsource that to AI. You can't get a plumber to come and fix your toilet if it's an AI bot. You just can't do that. And I think actually we're going to see an elevation in trades and craftsmanship as opposed to digital sources that can, you can get robotics to kind of help with. So we're seeing. I mean, engineering recruitment is still going to stay the same, I believe. I don't think there's going to be any differences across that, especially with the aging demographic. I would highly recommend people get into that industry if they can. It's what I'll be pushing Oscar to do. Like, mate, go and get a spanner, go and learn how to do a trade. It's pretty much rocket proof. I think in terms of everything else, I think we're going to probably see an increase in interim, and I think the workforce may potentially change. I think people are a lot more entrepreneurial now than what they were. There's so much more access to information. I mean, I certainly learn a lot from even flicking through Instagram and seeing people talk about different things. I think there is more, there's just a lot more entrepreneurship in the market. So I think the way that people work will change. I think people will probably go down more of a self-employed route. I think jobs for life are dead. I don't think that happens now at all. I think people move more regularly. Every couple of years, I would say, you see people move. If you bounce around any more than that, I think that's probably a bit of a negative. And yeah, I hope that's answered the question. Probably.
No, definitely covered more than that as well. And I think it's interesting to understand what you see as well, because when as an FM company we work with lots of end user clients, but we don't always see the challenges that you see as well. So it's good to understand those things.
Yeah.
I guess again, changing tack. At Penguin, we talk a lot around people, planet, performance.
Yeah.
We like the P's because we're called Penguin, so that's the kind of things we look at. How do you balance care for employees with that operational delivery? Because it's a fine balance, isn't it?
I think you've got to have your people around you that live and breathe your vision. I think and I've fallen foul of this before, if you're not really clear on what you're about and what your goals are as a business, it's not cohesive. You need to get people around you that understand your business, that are on board with what you want to do and how you want to do it, and that everybody's kind of going in the right direction together, because if not, then it becomes quite difficult. I think you've got to have aligned values across your organisation. For us, obviously, we're a sales organisation, so we're quite commercial. We like to add value. We like to be high impact. For other organisations, everybody's different, but for me, having people aligned to that has been the most beneficial thing in our business. For Penguin, people, planet, having people in your business that are aligned to that with net zero and all that good stuff, that's probably going to be the most powerful thing that you can do. Yeah,
we find that when we're talking to people and looking to bring on new people, it's understanding their values. You don't always see that on the CV. And CVs are great and it's good to get a baseline, but actually getting to know them, understanding them, that's what we find works for us. And I think a lot of more organisations are going down that route as well.
I think for us, we're very neurodivergent inclusive. And I think we live and breathe that, and most of our team have got, we play to everybody's strengths. And that's one of the things I love about running a business, is actually I can see where everybody's strengths are and how to get the best out of people. And kind of play to their strengths, and also helping them where they've got challenges and learning from each other as well. I think that's really, really important. So we really live that as a business, because I just think it's really important, and especially in the society that we're in now. I think things are becoming more obvious, and you're getting more recognition for different challenges, and that's one of the things that we've really enjoyed as a business, is being more aligned.
Good. And on the growth side, even though in some areas it is quite tough economically, there are shoots of growth, I think, within the industry, especially within FM, especially for those businesses innovating and doing new things. What would your advice be to FM leaders building and scaling their teams during a period of growth?
Oh, that is a good question. I think having people with a growth mindset is really important. So if you are planning to grow, and look, the FM industry, compound annual growth rate, there's lots of different reports, but we all know it's going to grow. Single service lines meant to be the way to go. If you have any kind of interest in private equity and watch what they're doing, you can see that's where it's going as well. But I think having people that can cope with growth and having a growth mindset, if you don't have that, it's going to struggle. I think being adaptable to change, being able to be agile and pivot, particularly in this industry, is really important. I think that's why I like FM, because it's never 2 days are the same. But you've got to wear lots of different hats, and you've got to be able to kind of go from one thing to another quite quickly. And also kind of be bought into what everybody's doing. Again, if you're not bought into it, if you're not aligned with values, you're really going to struggle. So growth mindset and value alignment is what I'd look for. Skills can be taught, attitudes can't.
Yep.
And that's something I've learned over the past year.
So I guess on that point around things that can't be taught, or potential issues, what are the most common people-related challenges within FM that you come across, and how can they be addressed?
I see quite a lot of people overpromise and kind of sell a dream.
Yeah.
And that happens quite a lot, and people get sold a dream at kind of initial stages, and then after 6 months it's not quite turned out how they expected. I think probably being a bit more honest about what's needed and how they're going to get there, and what that looks like in kind of how many months or years down the line. I think it'd probably save a lot of people kind of either moving on kind of quite quickly, like 6 to 18 months or something like that. I forgot what the question was.
So looking at the most common challenges that you see in FM organisations in terms of the people problems.
So one of the things we're finding at the minute in the talent and recruitment business is feedback, how quickly that comes, time to offer, and the delays in that. So that can sometimes take between 1 and 6 weeks. And that is an awfully long time to be waiting as somebody to either have an offer or have it in writing, or await kind of specific feedback. And we're seeing that across lots and lots of different organisations. So that's probably, I would imagine, in some part related to businesses looking at spend and looking at all of that good stuff, and how, looking at roles in particular. But that's one of the things that leads to talent loss the most, is actually if you don't jump on CVs, if you don't jump on interviews, if you don't jump on responses quickly enough, you will lose people. And that's one of our biggest challenges, is kind of getting that round really quickly. And I think clients, when you're in a big machine, and it's sometimes hard to kind of understand that as an external organisation. We see a lot of that. I'd also say I've seen a trend at the minute of people giving their notice without having a job to go to.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen that a lot in the last kind of 6 months, which surprises me, given the market and how different it is at the minute, how indifferent it is. But yeah, we're seeing, I can think of 5 off the top of my head right now that are currently winding down their notice period, looking for what's next. And that's quite unusual, I think, in this market.
Yeah. And it may point to the fact that the industry is changing, or people's expectations are changing as well, in terms of what they want from a job, and actually what they think they deserve as well.
But this goes back to entrepreneurship. A lot of people are saying, actually, I want to go contracting, and actually, I don't want to work 5 days a week, I want to work 4. And people are looking at their options, and the amount of conversations I have with people, because I'm really open. I say, if you want to pick my brain or have my feedback, then I love helping people get on in life. But yeah, and it all plays into what I'm thinking around kind of people wanting to go more down a flexible workforce route. And I think, coupled with businesses being slow to hire or slow to give feedback, it's kind of all creating a little bit of a perfect storm, really. And I can see the second half of this year, there've been a rise in kind of interim, temp, either placements or people opting to just go for a bit more flexible workforce.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess, talking around more on the FM providers, how important is it for them to be able to align with the clients that they are serving in terms of their culture, their values?
I think that is the single best thing that you can do in terms of mirroring your customer. So it's great to have kind of mirror image. So if you've got top to top, so you're standing shoulder to shoulder, and that everybody replicates that. because there's nothing worse if you're client side than having 100 people trying to get at you all the time, or not having a one hand to shake. It's really, really important. Also for relationship building, if you've got all of these people kind of approaching you all the time, building one kind of central relationship is much more preferable. And I think, you know, if you're not living and breathing your customers' values, then you're probably going to have some sort of kind of grazing at some point, because you know, it's like yin and yang, you need to fit together, and if you don't, you're kind of going to go against each other. I think sometimes that's more difficult depending on your client. In a perfect world, you'd say, yeah, we'll align, and yeah, we'll share the values and happy days. But the reality is actually sometimes clients are difficult, and sometimes clients aren't nice. And that's when it becomes more challenging, because how do you align with an organisation if they don't have your values? And it's whether you want that business or not. I think bigger businesses, it's tough, and you have to lump it or leave it, and sometimes you have to manage difficult situations. I think we're really fortunate we're in a position where we can work with who we want. So we like to work with good people and good clients, and you know, have positive impact, but that's not always possible. And I think, you know, when you get to that point, it's, you know, is that right for you? Yeah, of course. And you know, you've got to think about your own integrity, I think, at that point. It's the same for us as well. You know, we come across a lot of you know, we get lots of people coming to us and wanting to work with us, and we know we do our own due diligence of actually, are we the right fit for you as a business as well? You know, we don't just say yes to everything. And the reason why we do that is we're not private equity backed, we're privately owned as a business. So, you know, we can kind of pick and choose like yourself of who we want to work with. And ultimately, we were set up to make a difference. So if we can have an impact on that customer, we want to work with them. If we can't, or actually we're just going to be another service provider, that doesn't interest us. You know, we want to really make a difference on net zero, on, you know, reducing costs, whatever it might be. That's what I'm trying to do. That's really, it's so important to have that, because I mean, it's really liberating as well if you say no to somebody. I mean, it's a scary thought when you're an SME, or, you know, you're trying to grow and you don't want to, you know, you want to do business and everything's an opportunity. It's quite scary, the thought of doing that, but actually it's really liberating, and it makes people think differently, because if you say no, they're like, oh, okay, because they don't expect you to. But actually it can be really powerful, and the sense of like relief you get from it as well. And it's probably one of the biggest things I've learned the last year, is actually saying no is really powerful. And protecting your integrity and your kind of brand is probably more important to me now than it was probably a year ago. And with so much change, you know, we've gone through lots of different sections with so much change in the FM industry, built environment at the moment, you know, from technology to sustainability. How can, you know, leaders and people that you work with and clients that you work with ensure that people are ready and supported to evolve with that change? Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I find being in a leadership role now, I think leaders collaborate because we want to share the best of the industry and all support each other. And I think it's a big enough industry that we don't need to, you know, you don't need to gatekeep. I think actually there's more benefit in us all working together and supporting each other. I think that goes for teams as well. You know, it's not actually a big industry. You know, I've been doing what I'm doing for quite a while now, and it's uncanny the amount of people you really bump into every now and again. And I think actually, you know, guiding people through change is probably one of the most rewarding things that you can do. I think understanding people's emotional states and the change curve and how people react. I think understanding what your organisation is like and what your culture is like is really important. And for me, I think setting out the vision and guiding people towards that and kind of explaining the different bits that are going to happen and why, and supporting them through that. I think if you could see where the organisation's heading and why, and it makes sense, you can get on board with it. I think change is done with people, not to them. So if you are just flicking downhill, like that, and it's going to make no sense, not going to land very well. I think if you're collectively bringing your people together, to, you know, talk about it and show people the way and the vision, it's going to ultimately kind of benefit. And there are a couple of organisations I can think of that do that really well at the minute, that I won't mention, but there are ways of doing it really well, of course. And there are ways of doing it really badly. So if you're just looking for cost out and you don't kind of do it in a conscientious way, you're probably going to do more reputational damage than good. I think it's got to be managed really well. And I guess finally,
I always like to ask this question. So, at the last 5 years, you've experienced a lot of change, obviously personally, professionally, and since 2020, completely different position now of where you are. You've been really successful. In 5 years' time, where do you see yourself and Empro being, really?
Oh, that's a great question. I really want to continue to do what we're doing today. I absolutely love working with the team that we have and supporting our clients, who are all absolutely wonderful. I would like to think that we've probably scaled our technology side of our business. So with our TUPE app, I would love to kind of expand and grow on that offering and look at AI and insights. I'd also love to be able to get some kind of training modules, maybe with BICS, maybe have some conversation with unions to get it kind of approved in that sense. So I've got a vision around what I want to do with that side of the business. The talent business, hopefully my husband's built it to a point that he's on a beach somewhere, potentially with me sat next to him. So I'd love him to be really, really successful in what he's doing, because he deserves it. He works really hard. It's amazing what he does. And then the consultancy side of the business, I just want to keep delivering impactful change and talking about the industry, what it is we do, and hopefully promoting it being a careerist choice and attracting some really good talent into the industry. And what I absolutely love is if people come and join us, work for us for a bit and go on to do something bigger and better after, that's fantastic. We want to be a feeder into the industry and do more around talent and who's up and coming. So yeah, hopefully in the next 5 years, I'll be able to pinpoint some successes of people that have gone off and done bigger and better things.
Good. Well, thank you for that. I've learned personally a lot from this conversation, and it's really nice to understand where you see the industry, where you see it going, and obviously the challenges as well. And it's a lot of people shy away sometimes about talking about the challenges within the industry. So
no, we've definitely got challenges. There's a lot to do. I think we could collaborate more. I think I know there's competition, but I think as a we're generally British. We're all polite. We like to queue. I think actually, if we can get all of our industry experts together, we'd be much more powerful as an organisation and a community. So I'm excited for the next 5 years. I think it's really interesting to see what happens.
Well, thank you, Emma, for joining the Penguin podcast. Hopefully, it wasn't too painful for you.
No. Want to sponsor a penguin as well. One of my husband's best friends absolutely loves penguins. Jack McManus, if you're watching. We're more than happy to get involved.